2011, and here to bring us a special greeting this morning on this homecoming Sunday is Jane Petrie. Amen. Accompanied by Sam.
Okay, here I am again. You know, I can just see what happens. A few days before a special day, John wakes up and a light bulb goes over his head and he thinks, oh, it's a special day. We've got to bring Jane Petrie out of mothballs. That's too long. Pop her up and say it. So here I am. And I'm very glad to be here. I'm not a public speaker by any means. I don't have any, I don't have any words of wisdom. I don't have any advice, heaven forbid. And I tell stories. That's what I do. But I'm glad that you appreciate it and give me the privilege of being here. I have two little stories for you this morning, so you can see how God's hand has been working in this church for years and years and years. Years ago, even before I was born, now that's a long time ago, the pastor of the church, this church, was George Augustus Palmer. And I think some of you are familiar with Sandy Cove in Maryland, the Bible conference in Maryland. And he went on, while he was here, he met my aunt, my dad's younger sister, and they were married. So he became my uncle. And he went on to do such a wonderful work for the Lord. He founded the Morning Cheer broadcast and the Christian bookstore in Philadelphia. During World War II, he had service centers for servicemen in Fort Dix and one in Philadelphia. And he spread over the world. He founded a boys and girls orphanage, I guess you call it, home in India, a hospital in Peru. They supported missionaries in Japan, and all this started here. And then there was another. Well, now I have to say, Uncle George, Aunt Rachel, and three of their children are buried out in our cemetery. And then, more recently, my son-in-law, Stephen, who wasn't an axe murderer or anything like that, but he had no interest in the Lord whatsoever, and in the church. And he received the Lord in this church. He went on to he had already graduated from Rutgers, went back to seminary, became a minister, and although right now he doesn't have a church, he does, he speaks, they live in Massachusetts now, and he speaks, fills in churches. And Victory in Jesus is one of Stephen's favorite hymns. And every time I hear it, I'm amazed at the work the Lord can do in a person's life. And not too long ago, a couple of years ago, Stephen had the chance to take part in something like we did a few weeks ago when we had our anniversary. They have a friend who's ministers in a Methodist church nearby, the town nearby. And they had a background somewhat like ours. An itinerant English preacher used to speak and started the church. But they didn't have, oh gosh, they didn't have a church. They had, in the center of the town, there's a field with a huge, huge rock. And that's where he used to do his speaking. So when they celebrated their anniversary, they asked Stephen, who is British and has a marvelous accent, to speak. And Stephen has a little flair for the dramatic. He wore his robe. He had a special collar sent over by one of his siblings from England. And he adapted one of the former itinerant minister's speeches. And yes, John, they had a luncheon afterward. But this is just two. There were others. Bob Ringhamwall, Bob Gilmore, and recently Darren McGavin. He's an actor, isn't he, or something? Darren Bacon, who is, I had the privilege of having in my Sunday school class at one time. He was one of the finest young men I knew. Became a minister. All God's working from this little Asbury church. Amen. So, what can you do but love it? Amen. And again, I wish you a blessed Thanksgiving. And thank you so much for putting up with my stories.
It's wonderful to tell stories about changed lives, because that is what the gospel of Jesus Christ is all about, God changing our lives. You have prayer cards in your pews. If you have a special request, something on your heart or on your mind, a special Thanksgiving, please write that down. And Usher this morning will bring them forward. We'll pray for them in Mass. It will be prayed over individually, by name, by special request, on Tuesday in our Bible study and prayer meeting, which is 11 o'clock in our chapel and parlor.